And we are live. Welcome everyone to an impromptu Tommo's race Chinwag. I said I wanted to bring one of you every single week, even when there's not a race. And well, I'm not going to be able to stick to that between now and the end of the year. I felt we should just talk about the subject matter that is in the title of this live podcast, whatever you want to call it. Welcome everyone. Thank you all for coming. Is Sargeant closer to Albon than we think? I want to talk about it. Welcome Carlos, Seamus, Christopher, Kinyu, Priest, Phillips, Aleph, Cone, David, New Zealander, Talia, Niels, David, Holy, Addison, Seamus, Christian, Hannah. I definitely said a couple of you more than once. Ryan, Bernie, Alex, Jerome, Capybara, Ingrid, Christopher, Susan, Jonas, Woodo, Jordan, Michaela, Flying Spy, Jay, Neutrals, Belinda, Catfish, Daniel, Wellesley, Louis, Jim, Gissel. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining me here live on YouTube. If you're here live on YouTube, if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, or if you're here audio only as well, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., etc. Right? Just for your ears. Right? I was in a few of your Spotify raps, which is quite cool. I was in a few, which was fun. So check it out, audio only, if you don't want to look at my face. Okay. Although if you do watch, then you might. There's Minton's down there. I'm not going to show you him yet, but maybe later. Maybe if you behave yourselves, then maybe I will show you Minton later. So, the topic of conversation today, for me, conversation I find interesting now that Logan Sargeant is confirmed as a Williams driver in 2024, is to go over things, right? Yes, he did get whitewashed in qualifying by Alex Albon. Yes, he only scored 1 point all season, okay? And it scored 27. But I wanted to do a bit more digging. I wanted to understand this gap a little bit more, okay? Because head to head, and if you follow me on Twitter at TommoF1, you know that after every qualifying session, I update the head to heads. I'm going to continue to do that. I did that all of this year. I did that all of last season as well. Maybe even 21. I think it was just, did I do that all of 2021? I know you can follow the retweet because I retweet every single previous one anyway. But for 2024, I'm going to do it. But what I'm going to do is keep a live average gap between the drivers. So after the first race, I'll have the head-to-head. And then I'll have the gap from that first Bahrain Grand Prix. And then next round, I will then get the next gap, add it to that one, divide it by 2 to get a new average. And then just track the average gap live. You know what I mean? It'll take a little bit more work, but then it's a little bit more meaningful than just head-to-head, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to do next year. You look at Alex and Logan, it's a whitewashing qualifying. You think, oh my, how have they re-signed this guy? What are they doing? What are they? Josiah doesn't want to hear it. Josiah's like, no, end of discussion. There is no discussion to be had. There's no understand. Look, maybe there isn't. Because I wanted to go over all the numbers. So what I've done is I've looked at all of Alex and Logan's qualifying sessions, sprint and normal qualifying. So that's 28 sessions in total, 24 normal qualifyings, 6 sprint shootouts. And basically aggregated the numbers and tried to, what I'm trying to do here, I guess, is trying to look at it as if I was James Vowles, right? As if I was team principal, which maybe one day, okay? Maybe one day. But I want to really try and understand this quality gap, because obviously race pace gaps, it's difficult, isn't it? Because there's a lot more nuance that goes into that. And I think it's fairer to expect a rookie to be close in qualifying but far off in the race. It's kind of like we're seeing with Piastri and Norris. I want to kind of go into this whole Albon Sargeant thing from that point of view. So, what I've done is I've broken it down the middle. I've took the first 11 races. So Bahrain to Hungary, the first 11 rounds, and then the last 11. And I kind of looked at all the numbers, got all the numbers in one half, second half. Okay. So, First of all, and again, I'll give a couple of spoilers. So, for example, Saudi Arabia, second qualifying session of the year. Logan went quicker than Alex. I'm not going to remind you by how much, but he got his lap deleted. But he got it deleted for the most hilariously insignificant reason, I guess. And I do have, in fact, I forgot to save it, but I'm going to quickly open up Photoshop, find the picture, save it so that I can chuck it on screen, because it is like, it's crazy. I forgot on reflection just how marginal and how insignificant a track limit it was. So again, if I'm James Vowles and I'm looking at, well, let me get it up for you on YouTube. All the viewers on YouTube who can actually see what's going on. Right, I'm just gonna pop this here. Boom. That is Logan Sargeant's track limit. That is what he went over the white line on the left, front wheel. If he doesn't do this, if he stays right to the white line, it's 1-1 in qualifying between him and Alex. But because he dips a tyre onto this white line, his lap's deleted. So that's just an example of, you know, I'm not going to, like, in that instance, I'm going to acknowledge Logan's quicker lap time. I'm not going to, you know, oh, well, you got done for track limit. Yeah, but that track limit's, like, come on. It's not a meaningful track limit. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And look, at the end of the day, right, maybe they should put lava there, DH. Look, rules are rules, okay? He shouldn't have done it. But again, that's not helpful from my point of view. That's not, like, if I'm trying to actually understand the pace gap between my two drivers, acknowledging that, yeah, it's a rookie error, quite literally, but it's not helpful for me to, like, take that into too much, well, into any really consideration if I'm trying to understand the gap between drivers. But before we get into that, thank you Toon. I'm going to say Toon for the €6. Thanks for yet another year of high quality free content and podcast, mate. Keep up the good work. Cheers. Thank you very much, Toon. Much appreciated. Don't you worry, I'm not going anywhere. As much as all the little side projects I try out always end up ending, which we'll get onto, this channel's not going anywhere, I promise, right? This is a solid, consistent area for content, okay? And thank you, Alex, as well, for the $20, mate. Much appreciated. I just did this in a Discord I'm in. Logan Gap was 0.519 from Alex if you got rid of his two big outliers. I did just the races. The races when you, Nick, when you remove his was 0.414. So I don't quite get what you mean there, Alex. But yeah, nice. Okay, so Alex has already looked into it as well. Your numbers are slightly different to mine because, again, I've broken things up a bit differently. But it'll be interesting to hear. Well, first of all, I guess, what I want to start with is, what do we think? I'm going to get a poll going. What do you think the average quali gap was in the first half of the season between Logan and Alex? So I'm going to give you between 1 and 2 tenths, 2 to 3 tenths, 3 to 4 tenths, or 4 to 5. Is that the best way of? Actually, you know what? No. I'm gonna do, because obviously it's more than 2 tenths. Come on, I don't need to. I don't need to. Yeah, I think this is a better range. I fully expect you to think 5. Should I just do 5 or more? 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, or 5 or more. Okay. Let's do those options for the poll. So 500 of you here. Appreciate you all coming. Let me know what you think. Average quali gap, Logan to Alex in the first half of the season. And again, when I say first half, I mean the first 11 rounds, which meant 11 qualifying sessions and 2 sprint shootouts. So 13 qualifying sessions in total is what we're looking at here. And again, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Don't forget. The poll is blank. What do you mean? The poll isn't blank. 163 of you have voted. So, interesting. So about 14% of you between 2 to 3 tenths, 42% between 3 and 4, 36% between 4 and 5, and 9% of you get 5 or more. Interesting. Poll blank until you vote. Really? I don't know. That I've done everything right by the book. That's obviously YouTube being YouTube. So yeah, what do you think? What kind of range do we think he was in within Alex? Obviously behind, obviously more than 2 tenths behind on average, but where do we think? Yeah, I think it depends on whether you're on YouTube mobile or desktop, if you've got light mode or dark mode maybe as well. I don't know. YouTube just likes to throw these curveballs sometimes. This is why you have to listen to me on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Even though it still, it still disturbs me. As in disturbs the content. Anyway, right, cool. Just tell us, mate, not this rigor. I'm keeping you on tenterhooks, Leo. Okay, cool. You ready for some numbers? So, it was 0.408. And, again, Saudi track limits, I've given that one to Logan. Also, whenever both have got through beyond Q1 to Q2 minimum, I've taken their gap in Q1, their gap in Q2, and then averaged it out to get a final score, right? So, for example, in Azerbaijan, Alex was 71 thousandths of a second quicker than Logan in Q1. But then in Q2, he was over half a second quicker. So I've added them together, divided by 2, and I get 0.324 for Azerbaijan, for example, right? In terms of, there's not many times Logan got out of Q1, but that was one of those instances. Britain as well. Britain, he got out of Q1. So yes, for me, this is the most accurate when you're just primarily focusing on pace. Okay, the pace. Bro just proved Logan is chat. Hang on, Freezy. This is 4 tenths as a rookie against Alex. Now, again, a lot of this depends on how highly do you rate Alex. Okay, if you don't rate Alex that highly, then this is not good. If you rate Alex super highly, then 4 tenths as a rookie, first half of the season, 13 qualifying sessions is maybe somewhat forgivable. Maybe somewhat forgivable. So, interesting ones here. I mean, again, Bahrain, he was within 2 tenths. And Saudi, he was quicker without the stupid track limit. So it was a very strong start. You can't argue with the strength of the start. Azerbaijan as well. He was pretty close relative to Alex. He had two qualifying sessions, the Azerbaijan sprint and Azerbaijan Q1. He was within a tenth of Alex. I'm just going through the highlights here. Austria within 3 tenths. Pretty good relative to some of these. I mean, Canada, he was more than a second. It was wet, but it wasn't great. Britain, I mean, he was almost a second down in Q2 at Silverstone. So there's some moments, there's some highlights in this first half for sure. There's also a number of stinkers, and it all kind of comes together as 4 tenths. And you know what, Carlos? I know you say, right, you don't look at Bahrain since it's a testing track, so drivers have more experience there. But surely you could argue that makes it more of a relevant thing to look at if we're looking at if you've got 2 drivers that are equally comfortable and confident and experienced on the track that they're driving. It was 2 tenths the gap, Logan to Alex. So surely you can maybe take even more learnings, arguably, for instances like that. So that's the first half of the season. What do we think for the second half of the season? Let's do another poll. We'll close the last one. So that poll ended. Most of you thought it was between 3 and 4. It was just over. Again, according to my perspective, my maths, what I'm trying to do here. But either way, it wasn't particularly close. So let's try second half of the season now. We're going to give the same options: 2 to 3 tenths, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, or 5 or more. Now, this second half is a bit more... it's a bit trickier. Gladiator thinks second half was better. David thinks the gap was bigger. What do you think? What do you think? Again, the slight majority went between 3 and 4 tenths for the first half of the year. But 4 to 5 was close behind. Was close behind. Surely he got better. Well, again, this is the... Obviously, outliers exist and can affect the score, and I've kept the outlier. I've kept it all in. But I want to put the numbers on the screen because then you can look at them yourselves and make your own, Because again, I think from this first half, you can see that, it started well, which isn't unusual. I mean, we've seen Yuki do well in Bahrain on his on his debut. We've seen Joe do well in Bahrain on his debut. We've seen Sargeant do pretty well relative to the rest of his first half of the season anyway. And there's a good point as well, Jesse. Alex as well. Is Alex improving? Was he better in the second half than he was in the first half? He had more point scoring position finishes in the second half, did Alex. But also he had, Australia was great until he shunted. He had his moments, but second half of the season you could argue that Alex improved, but again, it's that relative gap that's important. Seamus, no, it isn't, mate. It's not, buddy. Still keeping that hush, but we'll get there. So, right. Poll, so it's slightly more skewed, definitely lower. I think generally you lot think he closed that gap ever so slightly to Alex. 2 to 3 tenths is 22%, 3 to 4 tenths, 44%, 4 to 5 tenths, 24%. Well, the gap got bigger on average, but there are a lot of outliers here. So, average gap was 4.476 seconds. 0.476 in the second half of the season. But there are some big gaps. There are some very small gaps. So, I'm giving Qatar to Logan, the sprint, because it was a track limit that got him. Again, the point of this is to understand the pace. Yes, he did a track limit, Alex didn't. So Alex was quicker. But Logan actually drove the track quicker. The track limit did not gain him a meaningful amount of time. So I've given... Farewell, Robert, then. Farewell. I've given that one to Logan. Otherwise, it is a bit of a whitewash. It's a very bad start here for Logan. Belgium, 1.2 down. Belgium sprint, 0.83. Netherlands, 0.883. And that's Logan getting into Q2 as well, by the way. But Alex dunked over a second on him in Q1. Italy as well, quite a big gap. Singapore, about half a second. Japan, obviously Logan shunted, didn't he? He did a Kubica. Remember Kubica had that accident into the final, out of the final corner, that long right-hander at Suzuka. Logan did that there, so couldn't look at Japan. Also, Mexico, I've done not applicable just because that was a really... I actually watched back. I watched through every single qualifying on F1 TV in Q1 to do this, to kind of check myself about times being deleted and blah, blah, blah. Just to try and, again, give us as pace representative a spread as I can here. And, yeah, Mexico was weird because you had You had Fernando spinning at the end, didn't you? Which ruined loads of people's laps. So that kind of wasn't on Logan, but Alex went out early. It was just, Logan didn't get a time in Mexico. He did get a time that got took away with track limits earlier on, but that was obviously the track then greened up. So it's like, for this, it didn't feel representative to put Mexico in there, regardless. But what I do think is quite interesting, because I've said this about Yuki with his debut season, and that's a good point actually. Daddy Fett, should I say? I'm just gonna say Daddy Fett. Albon did have upgrades before Logan numerous times throughout the season, which is a good point, worth bringing up for sure. And again, this is what Williams are going to be and Vowles are going to be taken into account when actually trying to decide whether or not to keep Logan, which of course they have decided to keep Logan. But if you look at these last, even the last four really, Sao Paulo Sprint, Vegas and Abu Dhabi. Well, Sao Paulo, he was 4 tenths back, so yeah, pretty significant. But then in the sprint, he was within a tenth. In Vegas, he got through to Q3, remember, and he was a tenth quicker than Alex in Q1, tenth and a half slower, and 2 tenths in Q2 and Q3. But that averaged out at 75 thousandths of a second between them in Vegas over 3 quali sessions. So that was very good from Logan. And then Abu Dhabi, he got done track limits twice, but his quickest lap would have put him just 0.234 behind Alex, which was his second push lap. Unfortunately, they both got deleted. But again, I'm just trying to understand the pace ceilings we've seen from Logan. And yeah, there are a number of outliers here. But I think the general... the thing is, like, the USA Sprint was a bit of a stinker. All in all, looking at these numbers, the context of Logan not having the upgrades quite as quickly as Alex did. Look, I mean, you've got to be within 3 tenths to really be, okay, this is fine. If you're within 3 tenths, this is fine. He's not been within 3 tenths enough. I'm glad for Logan. He's had this quite relatively positive end to the season, pace-wise relative to Alex. But also, yes, Logan's American, which has an importance to Williams and the Rilton as a team because, sponsorship to an extent, but it's not like he's a Checo Perez who has all these massive, multi-million brands that follow him and will sponsor wherever Checo goes. Like, Logan's got a degree of clout from being from the States, but it's not the be-all and end-all. And it was weird to me that Vowles didn't confirm after Abu Dhabi. I wonder if that contract stuff needed to be kind of ironed out. Wasn't Latifi closer in general last year, Casper? I don't think he was. Actually, did anyone last season do a qualifying head-to-head average? Let me just have a little quick look on the internet, because it's not. I don't just want a head-to-head. I want an actual. I think the race might have. Let me have a look. I think the race have a little graph. Interesting. So, according to the race, the average margin between Albon and Latifi, and they've only counted dry sessions here, only from times in the same session compared, which is what I've done as well. Only trouble-free sessions, which is what I've tried my best to do as well. Latifi was within 0.390 of Albon last year. 0.390. So, yeah. Which is, yeah. Maybe we're overrating Albon. Maybe we are, Wars Junior. Maybe we are. Is Latifi clear? Obviously, again, Latifi was in his third season in F1, wasn't it? It was your 2020, 21 and 22, wasn't it? And obviously the race have taken away the wet sessions, which I have not done. I have not got rid of. So, for example, quite a few of these qualies were wet, weren't they? And first half of the season as well. I know Britain was wet somewhat, etc., etc. So I have not. Again, it's very difficult because we're trying to analyze a sport where there's so much nuance and like, well, you can definitely argue that even the track, because of track evolution, the track is not the same. Like lap after lap, it's not a video game. Like it's nigh on impossible, and there's so much like information and analytics that these teams have. And I know that podcast that Alex did with Jake Humphries, he was saying about how like all the teams have like loads of data on all the drivers to like understand where their pace is. And I do believe that if Williams hadn't seen enough this year, then they could have, on merit, got another driver who, you know, would have at least brought in the same sponsor revenue wise that a Logan Sargeant could. For it, like, just say for example, like, just to give him some seat time, it'd be interesting for Zach Brown. I think a Pato O'Ward would have been really interesting to see in that Williams seat, and he would have brought a lot of support. You know, he's from Mexico as well as Checo, but obviously he's a huge name in the US as well, being in IndyCar and doing so well in IndyCar for so long. That would have been really interesting. It did rain, yeah, it rained for like pretty much every qualifying session. So if I'd have taken away all the rain affected sessions, then the average would have probably, well, it would have definitely looked different. Probably in Logan's favour, but I don't know. I just don't think Logan's bringing in like these crazy sponsors because he's an American driver. I don't know. I don't. I mean, it helps with certain sponsors, sure, but I don't think it's a be all and end all thing at all. Alex, thank you for the $10. That Logan also races a lot better than Latifi. Nick had more points, but his best five after were 12th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 16th. Logan was 11, 12, 13, 13, 14. Yeah, Logan needs to work at qualifying. I think it's difficult. I think the Williams is a better car, or was a better car this year than it was last year relative to the field, perhaps. I think so. I think given like, look at the pace like Alex had in Zandvoort, and also look at the pace Alex had in Monza, and they're like two totally different tracks, totally different tracks. So I think the Williams, you know, they capped the upgrades after Canada, and I agree with what Casper said there as well. You can't really compare the positions year to year. It's the gap to teammate. Yeah, you have to, because those relative gaps to the field are changing all the time, even mid-season. I mean, obviously, McLaren's the most egregious example of that, of a McLaren prior to Austria and after Austria are totally different cars. But everyone's bringing upgrades. And I was watching a video from the race yesterday about Charles Leclerc and how after the Suzuka upgrade, you know, his performances just shot up. But obviously that's come so late in the season, he wasn't able to really capitalise. So, yeah, I think that when I look at these numbers, I can understand there's probably, from Logan's highs, I think there's just enough in the same way that I think there was just enough when Yuki finished well in his first year in F1. It was just enough to hold on, but like I would love to know what Val's list was of other drivers. Obviously Vesti would have been in there. I wonder who else. Would have been in there. And again, obviously, like an alternative to move away from a Williams owned driver, like he's their guy, he's part of their academy and he's their guy. They have to offer. They can't just offer a bit more. I think they have to offer like a significant chunk of almost guaranteed more performance. Yuki's rookie season was better, if I'm being honest. Well, I don't know. Taco, I think they're very similar, you know. I think Yuki ended, like, Abu Dhabi was fantastic. 21 for him, finished 4th. Great result. Finally out-qualified Pierre after all season getting slapped up by Pierre, just as what Alex has done to Logan, but Yuki pulled through it at the end. Made a lot of mistakes. Logan made a lot of mistakes. I think they're both very similar rookie seasons. Very similar. Got fortunate in a lot of ways. Got fortunate to hold. You know for a fact, if there's an equivalent, a regen, Russell, Leclerc, Norris, Verstappen, you know, they're waiting. I don't think Yuki's keeping his seat. And I don't think, like, if there's a Verstappen in the drive academy, Yuki would not have kept that seat after that first year. And I think if there was an equivalent to a Russell in the Williams Academy, who just, you know, won F2, then I don't think Sargeant's keeping that seat. But Logan just held on. Yuki showed more promise and speed. The thing is that and look, you know, like I'm a Yuki investor from early days, right? But I think Logan has had his moments. Again, look at Vegas. Let's just look at Vegas in isolation. And I know, again, it's a lot of straight lines, but those slow speed corners, they're easy to trip up on. Like, let's not pretend it's still of course it's a challenge. It's a street circuit, it's a challenge. And Logan went a tenth quicker than Alex in Q1, 1.5 tenths slower in Q2, and just under 2 tenths slower in Q3. That's pretty good. So, would I agree that, I mean, Yuki's high obviously was converting that P4 at the end, wasn't it? That was the high. That was the high for sure. But also that 21 AlphaTauri. That 2021 AlphaTauri. How many times did Gasly put it in? Didn't he get into the top 6 like 12 times or something? That AlphaTauri in 21 was a much better car relative to the field than the Williams is in 2023. I think that's where it's difficult, isn't it? You know, I think Gasly's high points and the pace that he extracted from the AlphaTauri was much more comparable to. It's hard to really compare because it was definitely a more competitive car, AlphaTauri in 21 than the Alpine was this year. But also, yeah, Gasly was crazy good. And then it comes to like, well, okay, was Gasly crazy good? Or was actually Gasly just doing all right in 21 and Tsunoda was doing a bit like, was not doing great? Or was it that Gasly was slapping it? You could say the same for Alex this year. You know, I said that in my season kind of review video. I was like, it's hard to rate Alex. I'll put him 7th overall. Because Logan's not a known entity yardstick. You know, is Alex delivering the ceiling of that car? Or is he not? And Logan's really bad. Or is Alex doing an incredible job and Logan's actually doing really well to be even within 4 tenths of Alex in a rookie season? You know? Like, it's hard. It's and that's why we will never all agree, because there's far too much nuance, far too much context. But ultimately, I guess let's wrap up this Sargeant conversation. Do you think Sargeant has the minerals to become an established F1 driver? Simple yes or no question. Do you think Logan has that dog in him? YouTube live viewers, do you think Logan has that dog in him? Do you think he'll improve next year? Do you think he'll make that progression that ultimately Yuki had a very weak start to his F1 career? They gave him the time, and at the end of his third season, I think Yuki is an established F1 driver now. I think he's a driver that if Red Bull decided he's got stuff to work on, but if he continues on this trajectory of improvement, and I think being a teammate to Ricciardo next year could actually be really helpful to him in terms of that emotional control and that decision making, because Ricciardo is so level and just efficient on the radio and with his emotions during the race. Like, yeah, maybe he could replace Fernando when he eventually leaves Aston Martin. Obviously, that Aston Martin-Honda connection. Yuki is very, very close to Honda. Arguably closer to Honda than he is to Red Bull. Do you think Sargeant has the minerals to become an established F1 driver? And again, look, I'm not talking Max Verstappen. I'm talking to Lewis Hamilton. You know, can he do a job, a Hulkenberg job? You know, can he do a Checo job? Can he do maybe a Sainz job? You know, at the top end, or who knows, a Gasly Ocon job? You know, can he get to that level? Because I think again for Williams, they got the P7. If they're seeing enough progress in a driver that they can own, versus, you know, they got some great time out of Russell, they got great years out of Russell, but they're always going to lose him, and they knew that. They were lining up Magnussen to replace Russell, so it'd be Magnussen Latifi, and Magnussen just laughed him out of the room because he's like, "This is not a serious team. Why are they replacing the guys getting all the performance out of the car?" A Grosjean job's kind of a bit all or nothing, isn't it? With Roman. Well, good luck to him because he's taking Callum's old seat, isn't he? Junkos. I don't know how it's pronounced, but we'll see. Right, what do you think? 55% of you yes, 45% of you no. Oh, it's kind of split the room. I think that again, when I consider Logan's full kind of pedigree here, and also, of course, like, I do think Alex is driving really well. I think on form, it's hard to say for sure. Like, I felt harsh not putting him higher in my driver ratings, but it's because I don't have that yardstick, so I can't really say with confidence. But it feels like he could jump in a top car and be somewhat competitive, just not a Red Bull. Like, he, you know, it's feeling more than ever now that maybe, okay, he could well be close to Russell, Norris, like those kind of levels, because they were all close in F2. And then you look at Sargeant and you think, well, you know, in F3, he took the title to the finale against Piastri and Pourchaire. I mean, Piastri's just had one of the most impressive rookie seasons for a long time. I still think Leclerc 2018 was better personally, but whatever. And Pourchaire's just won F2 and almost won F2 last year and was fifth the year before that. So Pourchaire's F2 record is pretty exceptional. You know, he's a world karting champion, is Logan. I feel like it would be... I think Williams can afford to... They got the P7. He can afford to give him another year. Give him another year. Obviously, the driver market's going to be crazy next year because there's tons of drivers out of contracts, including Alex. Give Logan a year to maybe learn a bit more from Alex and extracts this, you know, this performance ceiling a bit more often. I guess the difference Piastri to Sargeant, not just in terms of Piastri just isn't crashing like Sargeant was. I've not seen a rookie season so clean and not full of crashes. I don't know. Really ever in this generation since they obviously capped testing, because that's not really a fair comparison. But I think Piastri, yeah, Joe was pretty clean. I would argue Piastri's was cleaner, but Joe's was pretty clean. but also it wasn't as quick. But then also he was in an Alfa Romeo, so it's like, how do you prove the speed, whatever. But also Piastri would qualify within, I think his average was about 0.2 to Lando. So not only is that gap smaller than the gap between Logan and Alex, but also I rate Lando higher than I do Alex right now as well. So yeah, I think I can understand the roll of the dice from James Vowles, because if it pays off, then Williams keep progressing, keep moving on. They've got an American driver more towards the front, because no one's going to care, like, just having a driver of a certain nationality, having them fight at the front is going to do so much more for cultivating that fan base potential than it is if they're at the back. If it pays off, then great. And if Alex leaves, they've got a good set of hands in Logan there to carry on pushing on. If it doesn't work, then, well, they've extended him for a year. There'll be drivers on the market, surely. There'll be drivers on the market for next season. So, you're almost exactly 50-50. 51% yes. 49% say no. Thank you, Gladiator, for the 5 Aussie. Vowles has shown us with Sargeant how to handle a young driver. Imagine how horridly Steiner would have reacted if it had been Mick in Qatar. Yeah, look, it's a big responsibility these team principals have, what they put out into the world. And I think ultimately Vowles was very consistent and very good. And your job is part of the job as a manager, right? It's not just treating others as you'd want to be treated. It's treating others as they want to be treated to get the best out of them. Some drivers, the more stern approach works well. Other drivers, that will just lead them to regress and go into themselves. So I think that, Vowles did a good job there. It was interesting that he didn't confirm at the end of the year. I did expect him to. You remember, when Jos Capito just put it out there that, Sargeant will have the seat as long as he gets the super license points. He kind of put the pressure on Sargeant there, and Sargeant just got it over the line. But yeah, I did find that a bit. I thought that was a cool opportunity for Vowles to have been like, well, we've done this. Logan will be part of our team in 2024, rather than waiting a week after and then doing an announcement. I don't know. For me, Mick Schumacher better than Sargeant, but Mick had 2 F2 seasons. Oh yeah, actually, Laurie, I like that. That's another poll. Who would you put in your F1 team seat if you had to choose between Mick Schumacher or Logan Sargeant? Obviously, Mick had 2 seasons, but that first season in the Haas, I mean, God, that was just painfully slow, that car. Really slow. The second season, obviously, Magnussen was pretty convincingly clear. Obviously, not anywhere near the extent that Alex is clear of Logan in terms of head-to-heads and, race pace. Mick had his moments. I remember Austria was a really good race for him, and Silverstone in last season. I remember them being really good, strong performances from Mick. But then obviously look at Kevin Magnussen and how he's been slapped up by Hulkenberg this year. So it's like, well, what would Hulkenberg have done to Mick? Sorry, Pancon, you've got to choose one. You've got to choose one. And these comparisons will just go on forever. Thank you, not FIA, for the super chat. But then you've got to think drivers such as Oscar have had so much testing in an F1 car. He had the whole of 21 testing in an F1 car to further his development, whilst Logan was doing F3 GTs in ELMS. Very good point. He wasn't driving he wasn't driving a ground effect car when he was doing his testing for Alpine. He was not driving a ground effect car. Although, did he do FP1 for Alpine last year? I guess he did, right? Did Piastri do FP1? Or did Doohan? Did Piastri do FP1 for Alpine last year? He did. Okay, so he had a little bit of... But I mean, one FP1 is nothing, right? But he did do that Alpine... Oh no, that's the McLaren thing, isn't it? But no, he did do a lot of mileage in a 21 Alpine car. So it still helps, but it's also very different to a ground effect 22 onwards F1 car. But it's a good point. It is a good point. Piastri had that experience of that speed, I guess, that Logan couldn't possibly have had doing F3 and GTs and ELMS and all that. So, yeah. There will always be context and nuance. And again, you look at them in F3 when they were an equal machinery against each other, and Logan was leading that championship going into the final race in Mugello and kind of got very unluckily caught up in an incident and ended up finishing behind, I think, both Piastri and Porsche. But he took it to the finale, so in equal machinery. But Oscar's a serious, and I guess it's that potential, right? Because if Williams give up on Sargeant too early, they could be giving up on something that you look at his portfolio, could be really good. Thank you, All Blue, as well. Next video idea: which drivers could replicate what Max did this season? I mean, you're going to have to pick out specific drivers at specific times in their careers when they were at their very, very best. You think like, I don't know, Alonso 2005, Schumacher 2004. I mean, take your pick from the Senna Prost seasons, I guess, as well. Who knows? It would be an interesting idea. Interesting idea, though. Interesting idea. But anyway. No, we did not. Some of you think you did do FP1. I don't know if you did FP1. I don't. No, actually, maybe Alonso 2012. I feel like maybe that was Alonso's best season. I don't know. He felt like he had no right to be that close to Sebastian. But yeah, that's a fair point. Anyway, 64% of you think Mick Schumacher. Who would you put in your F1 team seat? Mick Schumacher or Logan Sargeant? It's tough. I think Logan has a higher ceiling potential than Mick. And I think there's a reason Val's passed up on Mick. Apparently, the rumour mill was swirling that Val's was given, because obviously Toto was trying to get Mick that seat. Val's was given data and that, and he opted to say no. So, and I think that, I think with Kimi Antonelli coming through as well, I think if Williams had taken on Mick, I think they could have been quite confident that, okay, we're getting a driver that we can keep for a long time if they do well, and not be replaced and not moved to Mercedes like George Russell did. P20 versus in the wall. I mean, Logan had his moments in the wall and Mick had his moments P20, but yeah. I think with Kimi Antonelli coming through, things are looking pretty good for Mercedes long term. Pretty good. It's a shame we have drivers like Joe Stroll, etc., where Porsche and Lawson are on the side. The thing is, Lawson showed what you can do with like exceptionally short notice, and I think Lawson's performances have made Logan's struggles look worse. I'd have both. Mick didn't really get a fair shot. You give both seats, Gladiator, to Sargeant and Schumacher. That would be chaos. Absolute chaos. Teo was 3 years in F2. Now he's won it. You can't do it again. Anyway, right, cool. Okay, that's the main subject matter done. Otherwise, rest of this podcast, I just kind of wanted to just do his little update, I guess, because obviously there's one big thing that's changed that was mentioned like a week or so ago that I won't be doing next year, which is the last lap. It's over. It was fun while it lasted. We started the show, the live watch-along show and podcast. We started it ahead of Spa last year, so mid-season break. We started the show just as Max started, because that was when Max started dominating, wasn't it? Because the first half of 2022, Leclerc was in the fight and there was a bit of hope, and and then in Spa, Max, didn't he start 14th and lead by lap 12, or was he 12th and he led by lap 14? I think it was one or the other. Yeah, it was. That's kind of when, which is not the. It's so funny, right? Because obviously when the announcement comes out, you see all the people go, like all their reasons, like they stopped doing it because it was flopping, or they stopped doing it because they weren't getting enough money, or that blah blah. It's really interesting to see that with people. It was like when it was like when Matt and Tom and Katie left WTF1, and there was all the rumours going around, and where I kind of had a pretty good idea of what was happening from those guys. It was quite interesting seeing all of the what was it then? You have not watched the podcast, Valka, that we did. Obviously, we did our end of season awards, just like we did the previous year, and then at the end of it, we just said, yeah, it's done. But no, honestly, like doing that show, that was the exact show I'd wanted for quite a long time. I'd always talked about having my own version of the kickoff, like it's a football watch along show that's been about for a while with True Geordie, and I always felt like I wanted my own version of that, and obviously doing it is very different to the idea, and doing the show itself, great, loved it. Like watching the race with like-minded people, me and Niran get along great. Like couldn't ask for a better co-host. Like really good. The patter on screen is exactly what it was off screen, and that's kind of what I wanted that show to be, and what I was interested in about that show. But ultimately, for me, I think having done it, having that responsibility for it, because obviously with the show, it's our responsibility to get the guests, which is fine. And obviously I took on more of that responsibility because obviously my stuff is F1 first and foremost, and I know a lot more people in the space versus Niran. And obviously that responsibility, having to be at the studio in central London, obviously Sundays, 22 Sundays this year, 24 Sundays next year. And then obviously when there's not a race, doing the pod going up on Monday, Tuesday. I don't live in London anymore as well. I'm a bit outside, so it takes over an hour for me to get there and back. So obviously when I'm doing last lap and it's not a race and it's like the Mondays, and it's ultimately I kind of came to it started with me coming to the conclusion. I was like, I'm going to give it this year till like mid-season, see how I feel. And by mid-season, I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to carry this on next year, because I felt it was taking too much of my focus away from this channel, my main channel, which is always going to be my number one. Obviously doing more of these streams as well I love doing these streams. I'm really happy with where my channel sits right now, where like I think it's about 75% of my viewership is my videos, and the rest is live streams. Doing the before and after race, and really pushing this Chinwag thing further next year, and developing it, and making it more kind of, making it more slick, and without, I'm still going to be in this space, and that's not going to change, just better graphics and more, getting you guys a bit more involved, maybe sending clips over beforehand that I can chuck in the stream. I don't know. I've had a lot of thoughts for it for next year. And obviously just when you've got that responsibility, the show on the Sunday, and I was able to go to a couple of races last year. But obviously in that instance, then I'm finding cover and people cancel, and then I'm having to find other cover, and it just ended up becoming a thing where I'm like, you know what, like I'm not enjoying when I'm there doing the show, I'm loving it, but I'm not enjoying the responsibility of it, and if it was 10-minute, if the studio was a 10-minute walk down the road, I wouldn't mind so much. But even then, even if even if everything about the show was perfect, just having that tie to Sundays where it's a responsibility that I've got to be at on a weekend, because I'm very happy to like miss a race if I'm doing something with Hannah, or doing something just during the day, and catch up with it, and I watch the full replay, avoid Twitter for spoilers. Like, I've done that many a time. Yeah, and so it just came to the point for me. I was just like, you know what? I just don't. It's not for me. It's not for me on for next year. Obviously, I didn't know. I kind of left it with those guys in terms of whether it carries on or not. The production guys and Niran, and obviously, I gave plenty of notice internally that it wasn't something I was going to do in 24. And obviously it was decided that they would shut up shop. So that's over. But what it does mean is obviously I am now more free and available, and I want to go to more. I want to do more stuff, and I'd like to go to more races and but everything's going to be, because I've done many a project in my time. I've done many a project. You lot know, right? What is it? Well, on this channel, obviously there was talking points, which I stopped. I know a few people have asked for talking points back. The thing is with that, right? When I think about talking points, so if you don't know, that was kind of my guest podcast where I just have a person on and chat with them about whatever, right? It could be an F1 YouTuber, it could be Johnny Herbert on, who's like the closest I've got to a hero. And the thing is with that, I'm seeing so many more, and also having done Last Lap, I really value just for me, just personally, like I think it's so much, there's a lot to be said for doing stuff like this in person, when you're actually having a chat and a conversation, especially with someone you've never met before, and you're trying to have an interview that doesn't feel like an interview, because I don't want any of my chats to feel like interviews, even though they technically are, I guess. And seeing all these other podcasts, obviously with Last Lap and Track Limits and Pit Stop and Screaming Mills and all these guys who do these kind of chats, I feel like their quality is so high, I can't match that. I can't match that quality of flowing conversation doing something over Zoom, because also, if I lived in central London and I had a little studio space that was, paid for, or as part of where I lived, that was space that wasn't in the way, then I could just get guests on ad hoc and chat with them. But that's not my situation. So for me to do that show personally, it would have to be something I could do in person. Like if I was to bring talking points back, it would have to be a in-person talking points. So because I can't do that, and I've got a couple of things potentially in the pipeline for in-person, in real life chats, which would live as podcasts, like long form chats, potentially live as podcasts, I guess. But I'm not interested in delivering them at a consistency, given my situation right now, that justifies bringing back talking points and rebranding it as that, I guess. I hope I'm making some sense. Okay. I'm kind of in waffle mode at the minute. But there was that. There was obviously the Veloce stuff, and then that became Live Fast. But, that wasn't my call. That ended because they pulled the plug on it, which is fair enough. And yeah, obviously Last Lap now, been and gone, end of an era. But I can assure you that from now on, I'm just not interested in tying myself down, like especially like a physical tie of stuff on the screen. I'm working on stuff off screen and behind the scenes and blah blah blah, right? But this channel is going to be my number one thing. Hopefully I'll make some more appearances on stuff like Sky. Like doing the Sky podcast is great, like, because that's just one-off stuff. Oh, were you about? Do you want to come on and talk about this? Yeah, sure, I can be about. Boom, lovely. There's no like, you got to be here at this time on this. No, that's not what I want, because fortunately, and this is why I can. The reason I can feel this way is because you guys who watch me and support what I do enable this to be enough. Like this channel and my videos and my live streams and my merchandise that's coming. Yeah, it's coming. That's more than enough for me. Everything else is like a bonus, is an extra. But that's more than enough for me. I'm super happy with that. And if I could do other stuff that I enjoy, great. But, you know, this YouTube job enables me, like when I was, last year after we got married, me and Hannah, like I was doing the West Coast and I was doing live streams from random Airbnbs and hotel rooms in California. Like I can do that because I've just got my laptop and my camera. I can just, you know, that's kind of what I'd like to do more of, I suppose. And yeah, like and other stuff like the live shows that I've done with Valdas, like they've been amazing, and I'm not sure when we're going to do the next one of them, but I would like to do another one because that's great. I get to meet some of you guys and, you know, the opportunity. But again, I know, like I'm so ridiculously fortunate and lucky to be able to do this as a job, not just because it's YouTube and a lot of people want to be YouTubers, but because it's a job where obviously I'm running my own business. I don't have a boss, but also the flexibility around when I make what I make and put it out, like that flexibility is so rare, and I'm so lucky to have that, that for me to not take advantage of that and make the most of that freedom and enjoy that freedom and not tie myself down, I'd be doing myself, I'd be looking back in years to come being like, why didn't I just make the most of the freedom that I was so lucky to get dealt this hand? Why didn't I like make the most of it and just, you know, because that's what values. I mean, last lap, like I would be in a better financial position keeping that going for sure, but it's not worth that money's, that extra bit of money I get from doing last lap is not worth it to me. I don't know, it's not just like, of course it is, but like it's, luck is the predominant factor in my opinion. You know, you're just not knocking enough doors that if you knock on 100 doors, you only need one to open versus knocking on one. But yeah, so that's why that chapter's ended. But it was great fun. You know, as well, I think doing that show, and obviously using this image, you can see the multi-cams. We actually have 5 cameras set up, the main camera and then one for each guest. So we typically have 4 for the live streams. And doing all that with the earpiece and all that, I think like presenting and that's something I'd be interested in doing, like giving it a go, like ad hoc stuff. You know what like Jimmy and Steve do for Gran Turismo? Like not necessarily on that scale, but I'm saying that I feel like I could, right, someone comes to me and be like, right, I feel like I could hold my own, and I think I'd like to try that stuff just as a one-off thing. But if someone came to me and right, you've got to do these many shows, you've got to be here, I'm like, no, I'm not interested. But like for one-off stuff, why not? Why not? So I think like personally, like doing this show, I've learned so much from doing that, and it was the same with Live Fast as well, right? Doing that with Aldas and Hayden and Matt, like I gained a lot of skills that you don't get from sitting in your study, you know, with a camera pointed at you and no one else here apart from Minton. Shall I get Minton actually? You know what? Let's pick up Minton. You've waited long enough for him. Oh, hello, mate. Also, means I get a bit more time with this one, don't I? Hey, yeah. You've been sleeping. He's very warm as per, aren't you? Very warm boy. Where's the ad? Yeah, you know what? No ad this time, Aleph. No ad. Hey, you right, buddy? Yeah, knackered. To be fair, it's because that key light's up there, so that's obviously quite bright in his eyes. Hey, good boy. Good boy. But yeah, no, it was good fun, and you know what? I'd rather everything, all of the other side projects I've done. Like I feel like I've I don't regret any of those decisions at all, because I feel like it's to an extent put me out of my comfort zone and made me try different things and actually improved, I think, yeah, just everything across the board in terms of what I do and what I want to do. And yeah, but again, the focus this year, there's going to be no more signing up to long-term on-screen projects. But yeah, this channel's going to be, it's going to be more and better next year. I want to get better at editing, because again, you know, I still do everything myself. I don't employ anyone. It's part of the reason I don't do shorts, because I just can't be asked. I don't think they're of a huge amount of value to me. I don't know, maybe they were. The last lap shorts got me good kind of exposure, but it's very hard to measure the value of that. And yeah, we'll see. Less bias as well next year. DH, absolutely not. More bias next year. More bias next year, DH. Something to look forward to. We do any content with Niran in the future. You know what? I've got something in mind, but yeah, ad hoc stuff. Obviously, he's got his focus is, you know, football's his baby. You know, Quadrant and F1 stuff is kind of side projects for him. And F1 Clash Stream. Don't know about that, David. I don't know about that. But I've got my sim rig all set up now. I think next year I want to bring back the Gran Turismo streams on Twitch, because they're fun. But yeah, I think we're done. Thank you all for sticking around. I know this is a bit of a waffly one at the end, but just a little life update. And yeah, don't forget to like on YouTube. Comment down below. The secret word is string. Now, if you've checked out Tommo's Racing Goods Instagram, you might know why all this string exists. Because I say I do all my videos by hand. Well, if you buy the merch, you're going to get a very by hand, made by Tommo experience. So I'll say. It's like a therapy session. Excellent. I should charge next time. Therapists charge a lot of money, but it's valuable stuff. Therapy is an incredibly helpful tool. Genuinely, you shouldn't feel stigmatized against doing that, because got to keep your noggin health's the most important thing of all. But yeah, thank you all for coming, and video later this week. I think I'm gonna video later this week. No video the week after that, but then a video for Christmas, possibly. It's in the works. I've got to get this merchandise sorted. That's my kind of priority right now. Anyway, bye everyone. Be safe, be well, be happy. Drink water, stay hydrated. Bye-bye.